Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
7:37, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman. You're listening to WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. And sometimes we get really interesting people who come here to talk, like our good friend KT McFARLAND. KT is the Fox News national security analyst and host of FoxNews.com's DEFCON 3, which is heard every Wednesday at 2 p.m. on live.foxnews.com. KT, how are you?
I'm just terrific, thank you.
Let's go right to the topic of this Secret Service scandal. They were down in Cartagena, and apparently there were prostitutes and Secret Service agents carousing together, some of them taken back to hotel rooms. The latest development is that we now know apparently when these prostitutes were in the rooms with the Secret Service guys, that also in those rooms were the president's schedule. Is this a big deal?
Yeah, it's a big deal. And the first thing I learned when I got my top secret security clearances was, whatever you do when you're abroad, don't go out drinking with people you don't know, and don't bring them back to your hotel room, because you can be compromised, you can be blackmailed, they can put bugs in your room, they could steal the stuff that's in your room. I mean, this kind of a gross and blatant violation of the most fundamental rules of having access to security information is bad enough, but the fact that these guys are responsible for the president's life is just, it's beyond the pale. And, you know, when people say, well, it wasn't the presidential detail, forget it. It was almost more important. These are the guys who were planning the presidential trip. They knew the travel routes, where he was staying, when he was going, who he was meeting with. All those things could have been opportunities for bad guys to do really bad things to the president of the United States. So I think throw the book at these guys. And I think there's a second thing, though, that's even more upsetting, which is it seems to be pretty widespread. It wasn't one bad apple.
Yeah.
It seemed to be supervisors. It seems to be a lot of them. I think that it's probably not an isolated incident. Is this how these guys behave in other ways and other opportunities when they're abroad or even at home? And then the third thing is, add this to the GSA scandal. There is a growing perception in the country, not where you guys are in Washington, but in the rest of the country, that this is government out of control.
Well,
that there is no accountability by anybody, whether it's, you know, at the GSA, whether it's at the Secret Service. It just seems to be, you guys in Washington have our money, you're having a great time spending it, and you're not even doing your jobs.
Yeah, well, I think it's hit here in Washington as well. Whether or not that changes anything and the people who are actually spending the money is another story. But, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, now we have to have a full-fledged investigation. We got people flying down or already in Colombia, interviewing all the prostitutes and going through their backgrounds and seeing who they were talking to in the past year or two. So, yeah, it's going to cost even more money. But I do want to get to the point about...
You know, and I have another question. Do these guys expense the prostitutes?
I don't know, or their whiskey. But how does that happen? I mean, come on, you can't go out and start drinking in a bar if you're a Secret Service agent when you're on the road, right? And if it was one guy who works in the Secret Service, you know, it's one guy who made a bad mistake. But and we don't know all the details, but I mean, if there really are 11 guys and people in the Secret Service, or people in the Special Forces involved in this, how does that happen? How does it happen?
I don't understand it. And the other thing I'd like to know is 11 guys. Are there no women in the security detail? I mean, where were they? Were they not invited to these parties? Or maybe if there was a woman supervisor, she should have said, boys, you got a little, you know, you're overworked and you're stressed out. Head to the health club.
Yeah, right. All right, there's another story we've been talking about for quite some time. That is Iran's desire to have a nuclear weapon. I don't know if you read David Ignatius
today.
Yes, I did. In the Washington Post, a pretty good reporter, and it's an opinion piece. But he's basically saying that we may be able to have a deal with Iran, and he points that the supreme leader has called it a great sin to actually have nuclear weapons. What do you make of this, that there could actually be a deal in the works, and that maybe Iran is worried about sanctions?
Well, I'm sure they're worried about sanctions, and I'm sure they'd love to do anything they could to get the sanctions not be imposed and to lift the existing sanctions. But, you know, if you take their word for it, remember, these are the guys who came out and said they had a cure for AIDS. So when they come out and say, you know, we really think nuclear weapons are bad, I take that with a grain of salt. It would be terrific if what David Ignatius has said is in fact true, that there is a deal in the works. However, it is just as likely, in fact, I think much more likely, that this is another very clever delaying tactic. And think it through, sort of unpack this. Okay, we're having negotiations with the Iranians. What does this do to Israel? It says to Israel, you really shouldn't screw up these negotiations. You guys better not be planning any kind of preemptive attack while we're having these negotiations, because that could screw things up. Well, what if these negotiations go up to the point where Iran then says, oh, we got them, too late. Mm-hmm. Do exactly what North Korea did. I think that what Iran is doing throughout is watching what we're doing with North Korea. If we're unable to stop North Korea, if, as the president, the White House press secretary is saying, if North Korea launches a missile, we'll have a strong verbal response. If that's the best we can do with North Korea, we're not going to do a darn thing with Iran either. Right. And who knows that? Israel realizes that all the pledges from Obama, I've got your back, aren't credible.
The one sentence that caught my attention from David Ignatius' piece today was, he says, so far Iran is following the script for a gradual face-saving exit from a nuclear program that even Russia and China
that struck me too.
Have signaled it's too dangerous. Have you seen that? The Russia and China have signaled
I've never seen anybody talk about that before, that even Russia and China are having second thoughts about it. Because on one hand, China is Iran's largest purchaser of Iranian oil.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They're the country that has basically gone to Iran and said, by the way, if there are going to be these sanctions, we still want to buy your oil. We want to buy more of your oil, but we'd like a new price. We'd like a discounted price. And the Russians are the country that's trading with Iran. It's a nuclear enrichment program, and its centrifuges. A lot of that equipment is coming from Russia. So these are Iran's two greatest trading partners. If they have had a change of heart, it is a significant economic blow for both of them to be doing something that would jeopardize that. So we'll wait and see. I mean, I hope, wouldn't that be great? But I'm a defense planner. I trained at MIT to look at all the things that could go wrong. I'm a glass half empty person. And so I think you have to understand that the Iranians are behaving now exactly the way they would behave if they were going full bore to develop nuclear weapons. There's nothing in their behavior at this point that indicates any kind of a change or diversion from that.
Just have a quick second left, but yesterday the Discovery landed here. It's going to go on display out at the Smithsonian Center at Dulles Airport. But one of the astronauts, Dr. Anna Fisher, was interviewed by a local anchor and was asked, do you have any advice for young Ethan who's standing here, who's an aspiring astronaut? And she said, yes, study